In this section of the video, we're going to talk about how to get ready to start spinning. You've not got your fibre yet, you're not going to be doing any drafting, it's just getting used to the controls of your eSpinner. First thing you need to do is put a leader onto your bobbin. The leader is what's going to guide your spun yarn into place. So choose something fairly strong, plied, cotton's good, but really anything you've got will be fine. Thickness of the leader doesn't matter at this point. I've got a loop about as long as my arm. So it's looped over, it's double the length of my arm in total. I'm going to tie a knot in the two ends. And then hitch them on around the bobbin. So I've pulled it through and I've got a loop there. Then I'll pull the rest through, so it's hitched on nice and tight. These bobbins have got a sort of a matte finish, so this doesn't slip very easily. You need to put a lot of force on for it to slip, which is great. And then I'll feed that round the two loops. Get my orifice hook through there, grab it and pull it out the front. Now, the first thing we'll do is just play around with our leader a bit, make sure our tension and everything is set how we want. So I'll make sure my speed is on 0, my direction is on Z, and my brake band is fairly loose. I can always tighten it up, but I don't want it so tight to start with that it just yanks it straight out of my hand. So push that back. Holding on to my leader, you can see I've got maybe a foot in front of the orifice, enough to play around with, and slowly start it spinning. Now, my tension should be such that when I let this go, push it towards the orifice, it winds on, which it does. So that's perfect. If I didn't have enough tension on, I'll take it right off as it's spinning. I'll go like that and nothing will happen. It'll just all pigtail up at the orifice. If that's happening to you, then tighten your tension a bit and it will start feeding on. And now I've built up quite a lot of twist in here, so I will let some of that out. And I can feel that pulling very tightly, so I will loosen that a bit. You do not want this, oh sorry, the cat's being right pest today. You do not want this pulling out of your hands. You want it to move when you let it, but not to control you. So if you feel it actually tugging, that's too hard, that's a bit tuggy. I'll loosen it off a bit. That's about right for me, I think. So now I've got a tension that I'm happy with. I'm ready to start practicing. For this, you want some waste yarn. I've got it here, brightly coloured, so hopefully you can see it nicely against the desk. Ball of acrylic double knit yarn. It really doesn't matter what it is. I'm just going to chuck the yarn on the floor so it can freely unwind and attach it to my leader. So my leader's got a loop in the end. I will put that through the loop once, twice, maybe 3 times for good measure, and that's not going to go anywhere. Now I'm ready to go. There we go, I've got it spinning at a fairly low speed. You can see that twist as jumping from my leader into this yarn. And I just want to practice feeding it on in a regular rhythm. So, that much. Oh, let's see. My problem here is I've got quite a thick join there. So I'm going to wind on past that join. That should be good. If you don't get any take up after the join, you can adjust your tension up a bit, but I think I should be alright. So practice No, I'm not alright. Let's have a bit more tension. There we go. So you just want to practice feeding this on at a fairly even rate. You can count if you like, or some people listen to music, but I tend to prefer to just rely on muscle memory, because then I can do it while talking or watching TV or anything. I'm not counting out loud to myself. And you can try playing with different speeds. So you can see if I try and feed it in faster, it's not taking up faster. So I'll adjust my tension again. Now I can feed it in far faster and it'll keep up with me. You can see actually the bobbin is stationary at some point here because I'm feeding it in so quickly. Or I can stop it and try going in the opposite direction, which will unwind all this stuff off the bobbin actually. So let's not go in the opposite direction. If you want to try going in the opposite direction, start again. But for the time being, just play around stopping and starting. If you've got your foot switch, you can try stopping and starting with the foot switch. Put it back to Z. Maybe go a little bit faster. The important thing really to be practicing is, you see my backhand here is barely holding on to the yarn. It's just got enough friction to stop the yarn pulling when I'm not letting it. I'm not using a death grip. You can see my thumbnail isn't white. It's a very, very gentle grip. And same with my front hand, just a very, very gentle pinch. And once you've practiced that for a bit and you're confident with the motions and with how this works, adjusting your tension up and down, then you're ready to go on to the next stage, which is using fibre. Hi! Before we start spinning, I'm going to talk about your choice of fibre. Now, people have been spinning all around the world for thousands of years, and they just spun what was available to them. So in some places that might be cotton, in others it might be wool, others it might be alpaca or other animal hairs. All this stuff is spinnable by beginners. Whatever you can get hold of, you can spin. However, there are some things that are considerably easier than others. So if you want to make the job nice and easy on yourself when you're getting started, go for a wool that has a medium staple length. Staple length means the length of individual fibres, that is not too soft and not too coarse, which will mean something like Jacob, Blueface Leicester, Shetland, Corriedale. You can spin with longer stuff, like this here is Wensleydale. This has a staple length of about 13 inches. So if I were to be spinning this like I would other shorter wools, my hands about this far apart, it wouldn't go anywhere. I'd be finding I would just be tugging on similar staples. So to spin something very, very long, you need your hands very far apart. It's a little fiddly as a beginner. Same with something spinning very short. This is a cotton ball. It's not the best example of cotton. I grew it myself here, and in England we don't have the best climate for cotton, but you can still see the fibres, and they are very short. They are about an inch long. So spinning this as a beginner, you'd not be able to spin it the normal beginner technique of a short forward draw, because you'd just be keeping your fingers this far apart the whole time. And spinning it long draw, while some people do learn to spin like that, many people do, it's not the easiest thing. So if you can get hold of it, I'll start you off on medium staple length wool. Different people tend to prefer different fibres. Like all of those I've listed are good for beginners, but some people may like the Jacob and hate the Shetland, or some people might like merino, while others find it too slippy. So if you can get a sample bag that has 100 grams or so of lots of different fibres, then get one of those and give them all a go and see what you think. It's very personal, what you find easiest to spin. If you can, what is good is fibre that's this coloured. It's called humbug because it's similar colours to old mint humbugs, and it's made from sheep that have more than one natural colour. So they'll have a cream and a brown and maybe a grey. They're all blended up together, and you can see this has got nice stripes in it. It's very useful when you're beginning, because when you're introduced to twist, it's very easy to see your angle of twist. You can see there, it's quite a shallow angle. As I put more and more twist, the angle gets steeper. It's good for you to be able to see your twist angle nice and easily, rather than having to stop and check to a card. It'll help you a bit with consistency. So that stuff's great. As is commercially prepped, multicoloured commercial top like this. This is Corriedale, and this is one that beginners tend to like. I pull off a chunk. You can see my staple length is in the region of 4 inches, so I'll be working with my hands about that distance apart. That is far more manageable than the 13 inches I would get from this Wensleydale. I'll show you some other bits and bobs so you can see various other fibres. Here is merino. Merino is very, very easy to get hold of. Commercially dyed merino. Almost all fibre suppliers sell it for spinning or felting. It's fine for beginners. Some people don't like it because it's a little bit slippery. The merino fleece is very soft and has a very tight crimp, but this has been processed sufficiently that you can't really see the crimp in the fibres. It still feels soft, but it doesn't feel anything like working with merino raw fleece. Some people like it, some people don't. If you find your trouble tends to be that your fibre supply gets choked up and won't draft, then something smooth like this might be just the thing to help you on your way. This here is milk protein. This is a semi-synthetic fibre. It's derived from milk protein, which then undergoes a viscose process to turn it into extruded fibres. Essentially, it's dissolved in a solvent and then extruded. So different versions of this process are different levels of bad for the environment. Some use chemicals that are very nasty for the workers involved. The Tencel process is slightly less bad, but in general you might think that milk protein or bamboo or rose fibre are good and environmentally friendly, but they're not as good as you would think. They are, however, a vegan fibre, which might be important to you, and they have a similar sheen to silk, so if you want something smooth and shiny, then they're not a bad option, and they're still nowhere near as bad for the planet as things like polyester and acrylic. So this, again, has a moderate length staple length. It's not the best thing for beginners though, because it is quite slippery, so I can put a little bit of twist in and it still drifts apart, whereas the wool fibres have scales on, so it make them a little bit more grippy, a bit easier to start off with. This here is cashmere. This is amazingly beautifully soft. It comes from the undercoat of a goat, so all the coarse hairs are left behind on the goat, while the very fine undercoat hairs are shed. And this is quite short. You can see an inch or 2 staple length. So again, not great for beginners, and especially not because it's quite expensive and you don't want to be worried about wasting stuff. So while you don't want to get the cheapest rubbish you can find, don't buy super expensive fibre and then be scared to touch it. Over here I've got linen, flax, which will spin up into linen. Again, this is not the easiest for beginners. It has a moderate staple length, but you need to ideally use water when you're spinning this to get it to slick down nice and smoothly. I have done a series of videos when I first got my 6, trying out lots of different fibres. Linen was one of them. I did some silk, did a couple of different preps and some art yarns. So if you're interested in going beyond the basics and watching me spin more unusual fibres, then go and check out those videos, because for this series I will probably be using this Corriedale, as it's nice and bright, so it contrasts nicely with my desk. You'll be able to see my angle of twist nicely because of all the colours, and it's the sort of thing beginners shouldn't have too much trouble getting hold of or spinning with. Okay, so we know what all the bits of the eSpinner do now, and we've chosen a suitable fibre. Now we're ready to start playing with it. This, like I said in the last video, is Corriedale. It's medium fine, medium thickness, medium length, medium everything wool. The one I've chosen has got several different colours, which means you can easily see the twist. If I put twist into it, you can see the angle, which is great for a beginner. So what I'm going to do first is just show you, before we start spinning on the eSpinner, show you a little bit about how twist works, how it behaves, because once you have that basic understanding, you'll find the spinning comes a little bit easier. I said to you before, the staple length is the length of the individual fibres in the bundle. So here, staple length is about 4 inches. If I pull off a staple length lump, now I can't, if I'm pulling within the same staple length, it does not pull. So that will be your first lesson. When you're trying to draft when spinning, you have to keep your fingers at least a staple length apart, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. I can add twist to this, but I cannot draft it out. If I put my fingers right on the end, each end, and pull, then I will get a little bit more drafting. So that's what you want to aim for. So I'll put that away. I will pull off a lump of this. You see, that's definitely more than a staple length. And what I'm going to do is just pull a strip off the side. Now, if your fibre is at all matted or it's been scrunched up for quite a long time, and it doesn't, like this, you could see it was drafting nice and freely when I'm pulling fibres out of it. They're all feeding out nicely. If your fibre doesn't do that, then you might want to pull it into strips like this. It does make it a little bit easier to work with. Or you can go up and down the whole length of the fibre, attenuating just a small amount at a time. This is called pre-drafting, and some people call tearing strips off pre-drafting as well. It's not something that I would normally recommend for nice, loose, fluffy fibre like this. It's very easy to get into bad habits of you can pre-draft this super fine and then just add twist to it in a later stage. Well, that's not really spinning and doesn't really add to your skills. It just gives you more problems. So if you're going to pre-draft, don't do it too much. So we have this bit here. Now what I want you to do is just play with adding twist to your lump of fibre. You just roll it between your fingers and you'll see, you can see the angle of twist quite nicely. You'll see if you put just a little bit of twist in and then pull from both ends, it starts sliding apart. So you know that twist is necessary to hold it together, but you need the right amount of twist. If I put in that much, that now the twist adds extra friction between the fibres, and that is not going anywhere. You will notice if you've got a fibre that isn't wool, if you're using something very smooth and slippery, then you will need more twist to hold it together. Wool on a microscopic level has got little scales on it which help lock it to the fibre next to it. If you're using something like silk or a synthetic that's totally smooth, you will need more twist. And you notice if you carry on putting in twist, lots and lots and lots and lots of twist, at some point it's going to start kinking back on itself and generally looking a little bit rubbish. So that's not a very useful yarn. So when you're spinning, you want somewhere between holding it together and looking like crap like this. So probably that sort of level of twist. And to check that you've got the right amount that you're going to want in your plied yarn, you simply take your sample and fold it in half. It will twist back on itself. That's what your plied yarn will look like. So I can see from that, that's actually a little bit less twist than I would want. So put a little bit more in. And there we go, that looks like a nice yarn. I would knit with that. it's chunkier than I would work with, but looking at the angle of twist. And you'll also notice that while I put a lot of twist in one direction while spinning, and it plied itself back in the other direction, the individual fibres are actually running straight. They're running parallel to the line of the yarn. You can see that orange line there and there, this blue here. That's what you want in a balanced yarn. If I put in too much twist, you can see these fibres are now the lines are starting to skew to one side. Now, that's fine if that's the effect you want, but when you knit up this yarn, your finished piece is going to bias. So to check you've got a balanced yarn, look at the lines of the individual fibres. I'll take that bit away. Another thing we will do, just playing around with twist, you pull out a few fibres. Don't pull a whole staple length, try and pull maybe half a staple length. Pull a little bit more, pull a little bit more. Now roll these between your fingers to add some twist. If you find rolling between your fingers hard, what you can do is take your orifice hook and loop that into the fibres. Then you can roll that between your fingers and you'll get twist added far more quickly. Now you can see here, my twist is all building up in the thin bit, and it's not really going into the fat bit. I've got loads of twist in the thin bit, a tiny little bit up here. That's because twist is lazy. It goes to the path of least resistance. So it twists up this little thin bit here, rather than putting in the massive amount of effort to twist up this fat bit. But at some point, this thin bit gets so much twist, it actually is less energy taken for it to go into the fat area. So you will notice that as you're spinning. You'll notice if you have lumps and bumps, you'll find all the twist gathers in the thin areas, doesn't go into the fat areas. That is perfectly normal. There's nothing you can do about it. You can manipulate it. So I could use my fingers to put some twist into there, get it quickly wound onto the bobbin. As soon as it's off the bobbin, it's going to go back to how it wants to be. So if you want your twist to be even, you need to get your thickness even as well. And I'll notice if I pinch here, pinch off some of this twist and pull, then I get a slub forming and the twist migrates to the thin area on the other side. So you can play around a little bit, adding twist here with your orifice hook, just rolling it between your fingers and seeing what happens to the rest of your fibre. Now, if I was spinning and I got to a thick bit like this that I'd put twist in, but I wanted it thinner, I can simply take out some of that twist by grasping either side of the slub and rolling between the fingers in a way that takes twist out. You can see as soon as that twists out, it starts sliding apart again. Now it's split itself into two slubs, so I can repeat. And of course, as I do this, the twist I had across this length of yarn is not going to be enough, because instead of it being just over this small area, it's now over an entire arm's length of yarn. So when you do attenuate to get a bit more twist in, you will need to add even more twist to stop it falling apart. And here now I have what essentially is yarn. Again, get twist. And there we go, pull it out. And you will find occasionally when you're spinning, if your eSpinner's in front of you here and you've got all your twist here, every now and then, despite your best efforts, you might find your fibre supply gets twist locked. You can't draft it without it wanting to pull a whole lump out. Again, use the same trick. Grasp here between thumb and forefinger and roll some of that twist out. And then you'll be able to draft out a thinner amount, however much you like. So that's pretty much it. Just grab your fibre and play with it. Twist either with your fingers or with your orifice hook. And just look at what happens to the twist. You'll notice too little, it drifts apart. Too much, it misbehaves. Just the right amount when you fold it in half, you get what will look like a nice yarn. You'll notice that the twist likes to go to thin areas and not to thick areas, but that you can easily roll it out if you want to let the fibres move smoothly past each other. I suggest you do this for at least 20 minutes, just playing, messing around, seeing how twist works till you fully understand it, as that'll help a lot during your spinning. If you get a problem and you don't know what to do, you can look at it and say, right, what's the twist doing? What do I want it to be doing? And fix your problems like that. So here again, got nice thin bit. I'm getting locked twist up in this fat bit when I want to be able to draft and I can't. So hands more than a staple length apart. Twist out some of that excess twist. And then it can draft again. And because it's over such a long area, and because I let this end go, now all my twists come out. So I can give it another go. And if you're really patient, you can even actually make yarn like this. Just hooking that in. You can add your twist, add your twist, add your twist. Pinch it off before it gets to the fibre supply. Then let it in as you're adding the twist. And once you've got an arm's length, you can then wrap it round your hook. This isn't the best tool for that. You're better off with a spindle or some sort of thicker stick, but you can. So you can make yourself a few metres of yarn like this and have a play around. Once you're confident you understand how twist works when you're adding it very slowly, we can then move on to the eSpinner and add it more quickly.